Hi, welcome back to HiCode tutorial. In this chapter, we'll be looking at events. Event is one of the most important things in HiCode. All logics are realized through events, and therefore event is the foundation of zero-code programming. In this video, we'll be looking at the basics of events. First, its definition, and second, the four elements of events, and third, how to add an event, and last, the basic what we usually do with events. Let's first look at the definition. An event is what happens to the application and how the application responds to it. Here I've prepared some examples. First, for example, I hope when I move the mouse onto a button, the background turns into red. And second, when the button is clicked, jump to another page. Or when the button is clicked, change the text of the button. As we can see, the so-called event is a series of cause and effect. First, we have a trigger, then we have a result. Now keep that cause and effect in mind and let's look at the four elements of events. So, the four elements are subject, trigger, target, and action. How to write logics and interaction in HiCode? The answer is break down interaction into events and define the four elements for each event. Next, let's look at the four elements one by one. First, subject. A subject is the receiver of the trigger, and nearly every HiCode widget can be used as a subject. And trigger means actions that can be recognized by the subject. And target is the one that you wanted to take the next action. Nearly every HiCode widget can be used as a target. And finally, actions. Action is the actions to be performed by the target. So again, we have subject, trigger, target, and action. Take this line as an example. Click text and let the text turn red. You can see by the colors, click is the trigger and text is the subject because it receives the trigger. And the target is the text. And what the text is supposed to do is to turn red. And next example, click button and go to page 2. So you can see here, the button is a subject and the trigger is a kind of action that the subject can recognize. So click. And then go to page 2. You'll notice here that there's no green text, so there's no target in the sentence. So who is gonna perform this go to page 2 action? Actually here, the target is the stage. Turning pages is an action that belongs to the stage. Next, let's look at how to add event. And after this, we'll be going to the editor to actually go through the steps. The first step is to add event to the subject. First, select a subject in the object tree, and then click event icon on the logic widgets bar. The logical widgets bar can be found on the right side of editor. And second, select trigger from the drop-down menu in the event panel. The event panel will automatically pop up after you added an event. And third, click the cursor icon and select the target in the object tree. And finally, click the drop-down icon and choose an action in the drop-down list. Now let's try to realize these two example sentences in the editor. For the first example, we'll need a text. And since in the first example, the subject and the target are both the text, so we're all set. Go to the widget bar on the right side and select this text. First select it and click Event. Now an event panel pops up and you can see here this icon shows that an event is added to this widget. Now text 1 is our subject and we're going to select a trigger for it. Remember, this is the action that it can recognize. And we are saying this because different widgets can recognize different action. For example, it has a trigger called value change and it knows that when the value of text changes. But if I add a button and give an event to the button, and you can see it doesn't have the text change action here. Let's go back to the text. Now we'd like it to know if we clicked it. So add a trigger called click. And the target for this event is the text itself. We can select this cursor-like icon and select from the target tree. Another way to do this is select from tree, and you can do the same thing. And another way to do this is to select current object, because in this occasion they are the same thing. I mean, the target and the subject are the same. And we want it to turn red. Select Action, Set Properties. And here you can see a whole bunch of properties for this widget. These are basically what we can see here in the property panel. And look for text color here. And we're going to make it red. Click a blank area to apply. Now you can see that the text is originally black. And let's go to preview. The black text, and now I'm going to click it. Notice that when I move the cursor onto the text, it changed into a little hand. Now it turns red as expected. In testing, if I want to temporarily hide this event, I can just click on it, and you can see that it is crossed out. And now this event turns invisible, which means that this event here won't be executed. And let's go back to preview. Now when I move the cursor onto the text, it no longer changes into the little hand because it doesn't have an event attached to it anymore. Now let's look at the second example. I'm going to add a button first. And again, add an event to the button. Select a trigger when clicked. And now remember, my target is the stage. Select Stage. For now, I only have one page, so I'm going to add a page first. Page 2. And maybe give it a color so I will know that the page is changed. Go back to button. And select Action. Notice that different target can perform different actions. A text box won't allow you to go to page or open link. So this is what we want. Go to Page, Object. And here we can choose directly the page, or we can enter its name. Page 2, or we can select here. And now go to Preview. Now we're in page 1 and click the button. It turns to page 2. Before we proceed, a quick note. First, drop-down lists contain options preset by HiCode. HiCode will automatically detect on what widget you are working and give you a drop-down list according to this widget. It will help you to find out its properties and what kind of actions can you possibly do with this kind of widget. And that is the second point. Widgets have different triggers and actions. A quick example, a button will not have input change, but an input box can have this kind of trigger. And third, click and select is recommended. When I'm going to select a widget, I can either use the drop-down list, or whenever I see a cursor-like icon, I can click it and notice that now the object tree is surrounded by a yellow box. This tells us that now we can select. Whenever you both have this cursor icon and the drop-down list, I recommend that you use the cursor and select from the tree, because this is more logically clear and you can see where your object comes from. We now only have a few widgets, so there's nothing much of a difference, but when you have a more complicated tree, selecting from object tree will definitely help you a lot. Next, I will talk about what we usually do with events. Let's first go to the event panel and see what we can do there. First, how to add more actions to one condition. In other words, one cause, more effects. Now I want the text to not only change the color of itself, but also the color of this button. So once it is clicked, I want it to set the color of the current object, and when I want to add an action to this condition, I can simply click this Add here. Click the cursor and select a target, the button. Also set its properties. Background color to red also. You can see from this line connecting them that these are two separate actions that both belong to this condition. Also, you can see the structure from the indentation. Now when I click the text, it should change the color of both widgets. Let's go to preview. It worked as expected. And next, how do we add multiple events to one subject? Let's take this button for example. I want to realize an effect that when I move the mouse onto the button, it changed to a different color, and I move the mouse out, it changes back to the original color. So now I will first complete the first part. When I move the mouse over, change itself to a different color. And now I need to add another event to this button. What I want to do here is click this Add Event. And now you have a group of new trigger, target, and action. Now choose Mouse Alt, still the button, and let's go to the Property panel to look at its original color. Copy it, and go back to Event panel. Paste it here. Apply. Let's go to see the results. Mouse in and mouse out. Next, how to add condition. We can find condition here, but now it is gray and it doesn't allow me to select it. First, I'll need to select an event. Click here, or this one. And now it lightened up. Let me add one more event. Say, when the button is clicked, I want to jump to page 2. And I'm going to add a condition for this action. Select this branch and add condition. To make it simple, I'll just enter if 1 equals to 1. So this is always valid. To put this action under this condition, I'll have to click and drag it into it. Not under or above, but when this condition turns yellow, and release it. Now you can see from the structure that this action belongs to this condition. Let's check if it works. Click, and it jumps to page 2. Now, if I change this condition to false, say 2 equals to 1, and go back to preview, and now when I click it, nothing happens. Next, let's look at AND and OR. This is also about how to add a series of conditions. What you want to do is to click this plus icon here. Now we have another line of condition sticking to the other one. If I say still 1 equals to 1 and go to preview, it still doesn't work because I have two conditions now and I have to satisfy both of them. But when I change this AND to OR, the action will be performed when either one of these conditions is satisfied. Please pay attention to what I'm doing next. Click this event and add condition. Please note that these two lines are not in a series, even if I drag it and move it closer. It now looks like they are all stuck together, but actually this line 6 and line 7 are separate ones because they don't share a same line. So remember, the correct way to add a series of conditions is to add from this plus sign. This 3 shares the same branch, and for loop, when you want to repeat some action, you can use a loop. I will talk about loops later when we come to use it. And callback is for asynchronous events. We'll be seeing them when we come to databases and service on the server. When you are dealing with an event that has a callback function, this button will light up. For now, I will leave callbacks for a later course. And let's go back to the slides. Next, some general operations with events. First, you can copy and paste in the event panel. Say I want to add this to the click event. I can right-click this and select copy. And then, when I want to add this to the click event, I'll have to choose the event. In other words, the parent of this action. I can use either my keyboard or I can right-click again. Now, this action is parallel to this one and under the event click. I can also select an action and right-click it to insert a sibling to it. This one I've just pasted and this action are both subject to this condition. When I want to hide events, I can click this little white dot in front of these lines, and now this line is masked, and it will not be executed. Now when I move the mouse in, it changes color, but when I move the mouse out, it stays the same. This is because I temporarily hide this action, and I can hide this whole event, and everything under it will be hidden. To hide the whole event, I can click this to cross it out. And delete. I've already performed delete before. It's just simply right click and delete. Or you can use your keyboard as well. And to delete all the events, right click on this bar and select delete. And all the events on button 1 has disappeared. And to redo the last action, simply use Ctrl+Z, or you can use this redo button. These two arrows here takes you back to the last event you have just modified. And last, adding comments. Adding comments is a very good habit in programming, because your code or your program is not only intended for the machine, we also want our colleagues and friends to understand it. And we ourselves might find comments useful when we are maintaining our program in the future. To add comments, select where you want to add them and click Memo. And you can type comment here. Whatever you type here won't be executed. And you can hide and show them with this button. Also, you can write side notes under this session. That is all for this video, and thank you for watching.